What's up to the probably very few people watching this? If you are, thank you. My name is James. I'm here in Vegas. I'm trying to start a breeding project called Sin City Dragons. And I'd like to take today to show you my custom enclosures for my bearded dragons and my Ackie monitors. This is the custom bearded dragon enclosure I made. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I made it. This was a display cabinet that I turned into a terrarium. I've done this a couple times before. I'll give you guys the pros, cons, and some of the pain points of doing a custom terrarium like this. Some of the pros are it's really unique. Not a lot of people have things like this. And it saves some time on putting wood together. So the only thing I really had to do to make this was to paint it. I painted it black to match the room. And obviously to do the background and the shelves. The shelves themselves I had to cut out of wood and position them exactly, screw them in from the backs and from the sides, and make sure that they would hold the weight of these bearded dragons. I also had to install the lighting fixtures. These are Zilla's Pro Soul lighting fixtures. If you guys have any experience with these, positive or negative comments, feel free to leave those. I'm always happy to learn. Thing I liked about them is they fit really well in here. They were easy to position, and it provided the UVA UVB that I needed, as well as a source of heat. The background itself, what I had to do was to take a hardening foam, go over the background with that. I took a razor to kind of straighten out the edges. Otherwise, once you first do it, it's going to be kind of bulbous. And I cut out these pieces here. I took styrofoam pieces and actually put it into the foam prior to it hardening, obviously. And then I went over the top of it with Quikrete. And the cool thing about Quikrete is you can mix it with a dye, and it's going to make it either the red, like you see up top. I was going for similar to the Red Rock Canyons in Las Vegas. The middle here, I've got a really darker charcoal mixed in with the red. That one turned out all right. I'm thinking I like the tops and bottoms better. The bottom you can see is probably my favorite. There are some spots where you can see the white from the foam, so I'll have to go over this again with the Quikrete, but you can get the idea of the coloring. I wanted that dark charcoal mixing in with that red, create that beautiful rockiness. And it's got some great texture. It's got a lot of great perches for the dragon to sit on. Different basking spots, different levels. Also helps give differences in temperature. So if you've got different levels in your enclosure, that's going to be different levels to where your bearded dragon can be sitting at for a different temperature. More pros of a terrarium of this style is the actual cost of the display cabinet itself. You can find these guys on Facebook Marketplace at your local thrift store for pretty cheap. I think this one cost me about $150, and it was pretty big. I put a lot of work into it, but the initial cost itself of the display cabinet wasn't too bad. Another pro is that it's great for arid environments, so dry, hot climates, which is good for bearded dragons, uromastyx, reptiles like that. Also, you've got different temperature gradients with these little shelf perches that are within this terrarium. If you've got bearded dragons, uromastyx, they're going to need those different temperature gradients so they can either cool down or warm up. The last pro is a lot of the display cases like this will have a storage component. So I like to use this one to store my dubia roach colonies. So you can see I got two here. Dubia roaches are great for a ton of reptiles, and they're pretty darn easy to breed. And thankfully this display cabinet gives me a quick and easy place to keep them. I also use this to store bearded dragon bites, cricket food, cricket drink, my calcium. which you're definitely going to need for these guys, and any other little things that you might need to keep in here. Some of the pain points of this type of enclosure is the cleaning, especially if you've got bearded dragons. They like to leave little droppings everywhere. You're probably going to find yourself cleaning this almost daily, at least every few days. Cutting the shelving was a big pain point because you have to cut it exactly to the measurements of the display cabinet. That way there's no gaps that exist. And if there are, at least they're minimal enough to where the bearded dragon can't escape or get stuck in between those gaps. Some more of the cons of a terrarium like this is the cost of the lighting fixture itself. These lighting fixtures are great because they cover a wide area, but they are about $65 to $85. I found that the bulbs here, the UVA UVB bulbs and the standard mini halogen bulbs, which do generate heat, aren't too expensive. Usually they're about $8, something like that. Another con of this type of enclosure is that it's really not great for arboreal environments. I've tried to do one like this before with an arboreal style. The problem is there's so many gaps in these pieces of wood that it's just not great at holding in that humidity, and it's difficult to create a nice seal. Sealing the wood is going to be a pain point for both of these enclosures. What I use is a thing called polyacrylic, which I go over all the wood on the inside and the outside with polyacrylic just to make sure it's all watertight. And the last pain point, similar to the other one, is just the weight of the enclosure itself. The Quikrete concrete isn't too heavy, but with this much of it, it does add some weight. The shelvings add their own weight, and this thing, to start with, it wasn't light, so